Back-to-back tournament wins in the Gold Cup and the Nations League this summer, including back-to-back final victories over our rival Mexico, has U.S. men's national team fans absolutely buzzing, throwing some exciting starts to the European season for guys like Conrad De La Fuente and Joe Scally, and it's fair to say that the excitement is reaching a fever pitch. But with all that excitement also comes expectations, and we have three massive World Cup qualifiers coming up against El Salvador away, Canada at home, and Honduras away. Greg Berhalter has to quickly figure out his best squad and best rotations in order for the U.S. men's national team to maintain their momentum from this summer's victories and put themselves in position for a possible World Cup qualification. So who's the best squad and what are the biggest hurdles Greg will face as we finally begin World Cup qualification? All that and more on this episode of the Yank Report. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report, the show where we talk about the U.S. men's national team. And it's great to finally be talking about the team again. So if you want to support the channel, the best way to do so is to click the like button. And if you have not done so already, hit the subscribe button. First things first, let's talk about logistics. In the September World Cup qualifying window, the U.S. men's national team will be playing 3 games in 3 countries in 6 days. This is an absolutely brutal schedule whenever you consider that the bulk of the roster will also be making a transatlantic flight from Europe and back just to get to the game and get back home. With that in mind, we can make a few assumptions. Number one, there will be heavy rotation game to game, and not just for the U.S. but for our opponents as well. Number two, Greg will likely lean heavily on experience early on as he's done in the past. And number three, we'll be able to carry expanded rosters. Though only 23 players will be named on game day, Greg Berhalter said himself that he expects to take 26 to 28 players for qualifying. So for the purposes of this video, we'll name our 23, and then we'll name an additional 23 players to get to that 26. Guys, before we move on with the video, we got an important bit of business that we need to attend to. In celebration of the 2021 MLS All-Star Game, OneFootball will be doing a giveaway on the channel for Yank Report viewers. OneFootball will be giving away 1 MLS All-Star jersey to a fan based in the United States. If you want to enter for a chance to win, all you got to do is click a link in the description and then fill out your information in order to enter. Now, this is the most important part of this whole thing. Filippo from Tactical Manager has already told me that he's going to enter the competition using my link, and I do not want Filippo to win this jersey from the Yank Report link. I want you guys to win it. So make sure you click the link in the description right now and enter so that Filippo does not win this jersey, because the man already has enough jerseys. Now, thank you to OneFootball for this giveaway, for giving you guys the opportunity to win an MLS All-Star jersey. Now let's get back to the video. Last but not least, let's talk about tactics. Since his arrival, Greg Berhalter has preached about being an attacking-based team that creates scoring opportunities through unbalancing the opponent. The squad has traditionally lined up in a 4-3-3 with fullbacks that push very high, and a 6 that provides defensive cover and distribution through the back. Through the last 2 tournaments, though, Greg has found tremendous success into shifting into being more defensive team that looks to limit opportunities and create opportunities through a high press. Greg has experimented with the 3-4-2-1 formation that has become very popular recently in world soccer, and considering the necessity for heavy rotation, along with the success Greg has found recently with a more conservative approach, I'm very much expecting the 3-4-2-1 to be used throughout this qualifying window. Now, with that in mind, let's jump into the rosters. So starting where we always do at the keeper, and this one is pretty easy to pick the 3 names. It's going to be Zach Steffen, Matt Turner, and Ethan Horvath. I think absolutely no surprises there. Now, it is going to be interesting to see which keeper starts for the U.S. men's national team. Steffen is still the backup at Man City, though he's getting cup games, and he did have a solid performance in the Community Shield match. Ethan Horvath is competing for that Nottingham Forest starting job, and Matt Turner is, of course, Matt Turner, an absolute wall and one of the best shot stoppers in MLS, and had a fantastic Gold Cup. So who Berhalter ultimately decides to go with at keeper is going to be super interesting. Will we see one guy for 3 games? Will we see multiple guys? Will each guy get a game? It's going to be very interesting. Moving on to fullback, we've got Serginho Dest, of course, Anthony Robinson, Shaq Moore, and Reggie Cannon. I opted to go with 4 fullbacks here. Dest, Robinson, and Moore are pretty much slam dunks, as Dest is one of the most talented players in the pool. Robinson is one of the few left backs playing in a top 5 league, and Moore is coming off of a good Gold Cup, and he can also play left and right back, so he's got some utility there. Cannon is a bit of a mystery, as he's not featured for Boa Vista yet this year, with transfer rumors swirling swirling. It wouldn't be a huge surprise to see Cannon left out of the September qualifiers, but it does seem to be a trusted veteran within the group for Greg. Whenever it comes to guys like Joe Scally and Sam Vines, there's some interesting prospects, though Scally is still fighting for a starting role at Mönchengladbach, and Vines has recently completed a move to Belgium. I'd love to see Scally get one of those extra spots in the roster, that additional 3, because he's such a talent, and I'd love to see him with this group, but I think staying behind may be the move for him better long-term career-wise, as, you know, he got some early starts early on with Mönchengladbach, but that was because their left back was out with injury. He's returned from injury, so now it's going to be up to him to find a spot in that team. And whenever it comes to long-term what's best for the U.S. men's national team, it's probably Joe Scally finding a starting spot and sticking with his squad. So Greg may opt to leave Scally out for this particular qualifying window and allow him to get more minutes with his club during the break, with hopes that he becomes a fixture for that Mönchengladbach starting lineup. Moving on to the center backs, and remember, I'm expecting 3 center back formations, so there'll be 3 center backs starting. I'm taking 5, and I got John Brooks, Miles Robinson, Mark McKenzie, Chris Richards, and James Sands. Now, John Brooks is a no-doubter, and after a strong performance in the Gold Cup, I believe Miles Robinson is a no-doubter as well. Now, Mark McKenzie had some strong shifts in the Nations League, though he's not currently a starter for Genk. The big question mark really is Chris Richards. I mean, Chris Richards is a prodigious talent, but he's also been struggling for minutes at Bayern since returning from injury, and a transfer seems to be looming. So I wouldn't be incredibly surprised to see if Richards is left off of the September qualifiers to figure out his club situation. And finally, as I'm taking 5 center backs, I'm expecting heavy rotation with the 3 in the back. And my 5th is the versatile James Sands. James Sands is a 3 in the back specialist, and he can also cover the 6 spot if we need him to. So he's got a little bit of versatility. I love his passing out of the back. I think he's a great option if we're playing a 3-man back line. I'm leaving off Matt Miazga, who has not gotten minutes so far this season, as Chelsea has shelved him to look for a loan. At the moment, it appears that Miazga will be heading to La Liga this season, and as such, may not be participating in the September qualifiers. Walker Zimmerman is another name who could potentially be in the mix. He just recently returned from that injury he suffered in the Gold Cup, so we'll see how that plays out. Defensive midfielders Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Kellen Acosta, and Luca De La Torre. Remember, I'm playing a 3-4-2-1, so we have 2 pivot 6s, and it feels so much better heading into an international competition with a healthy Tyler Adams available and ready. Adams has been featured heavily early on in the center of the park for Jesse Marsch's RB Leipzig. Alongside Adams in the double pivot will be Juventus man Weston McKennie, who will be free to attack the game along with the hero of the Gold Cup, Kellen Acosta. Rounding out my defensive midfielders is the man from Heracles, Luca De La Torre. Now, this is kind of a tough one. I'm pretty confident about those 3 guys in Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, Kellen Acosta. That 4th spot, I'm giving it to Luca De La Torre. He has played there for Heracles in the past. I believe he started the first game of the Eredivisie season in that double pivot position, so he can do the job, though he would be a name that we haven't seen much of in this U.S. men's national team setup. So I wouldn't be surprised if Greg opts to go with someone else, but I think that Luca De La Torre is the man for the job in this particular window. Now for my attacking midfielders. These are going to be Christian Pulisic, Giovanni Reyna, Brendan Aronson, and Timo Weah. And perhaps the easiest position to pick on the roster are the attacking midfielders. I mean, Christian Pulisic is still the golden boy. He picked up a goal in Chelsea's first game of the season. The 18-year-old Gio Reyna appears to be reaching new heights at Dortmund this season, playing a more interior role for Dortmund. Aronson has picked up where he left off at Salzburg, and Weah is still in rotation in the French Champions League side Lille, though he's not off to a firing start as much as we'd like him to. We aren't seeing that progression from Weah that we would like to early on in the season, but it's only been a couple of games, so that may change. But as of right now, these are 4 guys that I'm pretty confident with that could do that job, that could both be attackers, they could get out wide, they can play inside, they can create, they can do all kinds of stuff from that position. 4 tremendous players that we're lucky to have. Now, we're going from one of the easiest positions to pick in the national team to one of the toughest positions to pick in the national team, and that's the striker. Let's start off with Josh Sargent. Then we have Jordan Pefok, and I'm going with Giassi Zardes. Now, Sargent is a no-brainer after lighting it up in the preseason at Bremen and then impressing in his first EPL game for Norwich. Jordan Pefok continues to score goals with his head in the Swiss League, and Giassi Zardes is old reliable. Now, this isn't the sexiest group in the world, and I'm hoping that players like Matthew Hoppe and Ricardo Pepi can emerge as stronger candidates for this group. But at the moment, I think the veterans can come in this particular window and do the job. So that's my 23, but wait, there's more. And as I said at the beginning, Greg is likely to bring in at least 26 players to the qualifiers. So we've got 3 more players to name. And this is where things can get a little bit interesting and you can start to experiment a little bit. For my first extra spot, I'm going to go with Sebastian Lletget. Sebastian Lletget is going to be on the qualifying roster. You know it. I know it. So we might as well put him in there. He can cover at both the attacking midfielder and defensive midfielder's positions. So he's pretty locked in there, a veteran presence that has a ton of minutes under Berhalter. My next one is going to go to Conrad de la Fuente. Conrad has absolutely exploded onto the scene in the French league side for Marseille. He's fun. He's aggressive. He plays with no fear, and he makes things happen. Conrad has been playing as a very attacking left wing back in Marseille, so he brings a bit of versatility to the roster. He's also very likely to be part of the team moving forward, so the faster we can get him integrated, and introduced to the qualifying experience, the better for me. Now, the last positional spot on this roster, I'm going to give it to Joe Scally. There have been question marks surrounding the defensive liabilities at fullback for the U.S. men's national team for a long time. Scally has put in some good shifts at left back for Mönchengladbach, including a very impressive performance against Bayern Munich. At just 18 years old, Scally has a ton of soccer ahead of him, but this would be a great opportunity to introduce him to international soccer and give him a taste of the next level. So that's my 26 for September, and honestly, this is an incredibly strong team with a ton of flexibility, and I'm beyond excited to see these guys play. Now, there's also some great names that we left off of this list, and Greg Berhalter has some tough decisions looming, particularly surrounding the guys who are not getting minutes at the moment and facing transfers. Guys like Reggie Cannon, Chris Richards, Matthew Hoppe, a player that I didn't necessarily talk about but is relevant to this particular list. Matthew Hoppe has transfer rumors swirling. He recently came back to training for Schalke, so he may be staying there. We don't know. He might be an option at that striker role. He might be an option as one of those overage players that Greg just brings to see what's going on, though you can't fault him for allowing him to stick with this club in this particular window and figure out his playing situation a little bit more. Now, I think an important aspect of this particular cycle and this particular qualifying window is, as we mentioned, this is going to be 3 games in 3 different countries in 6 days. And this isn't just a U.S. men's national team thing. This is also going to be applied to the teams we're playing. So the first game away is at El Salvador, the second game is at Canada, and then the last game is also going to be away at Honduras. And how we approach that is going to be interesting, but also how other teams approach that is going to be interesting as well. One thing that I've heard is that second game is going to be against Canada at home, and if you're Canada, do you play your best players against the U.S. and potentially lose even with your best lineup, or do you sit some of your best guys against the U.S. expecting that you're probably not going to get a result from the U.S. at home anyway, so you put out a lesser lineup and play your better players in your other 2 games? For the U.S., it's going to be likewise. Nobody is going to be playing 90 minutes across 3 games in 6 days. That's crazy amount of minutes. So where do you give minutes to guys like John Brooks, and where do you give rest? Where do you give minutes to guys like Gio Reyna and Christian Pulisic? Where do you bring in the guys like Sebastian Lletget and maybe Luca de la Torre, maybe Kellen Acosta, to give help to those players? For me, I think that that's where the 3 in the back formation comes in. It allows us to make the most of the depth at our roster. If we're playing in that traditional 4-3-3, then suddenly guys like Sebastian Lletget are going to have to play a ton of minutes because we just don't have the 8s. Or if we move Gio Reyna into the middle, we're still going to have to play Sebastian Lletget, but that might mean we have lesser options at that wing position. No matter what we do, we're not going to be able to play our best guys game over game for every minute. So we're going to have to get creative with how we approach this. And I think that 3 in the back formation allows us to make the most of it, to maximize the talent that we have, not just in a best 11 situation, but in a best 23 situation. So I'm curious your thoughts on the qualifying window. Do you think we're going to go with a 3 in the back, or do you think we're going to go with that more traditional 4-3-3 that we've seen with Greg Berhalter throughout his tenure? What players make the roster for you? How do you handle those situations like a Matt Miazga and a Chris Richards that are have their futures in doubt in their club situation and are looking to to get transfers and are looking to finalize transfers, do you bring them to that qualifying window despite the fact that they haven't had much playing time, or do you leave them at home and allow them to figure out their situation and hope that they can be a part of the group in the future? Let me know in the comments section. As always, if you speak Spanish, please leave a comment in Spanish so I can practice my Spanish. If you liked the video, please consider hitting that like button, and if you're not yet subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button so you can be a part of this party moving forward. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report.